Okay. So thank you guys so much. Nice to have a chance to be with you again. Happy Tuesday. I, it feels like a modern thing. I don't remember anybody saying Happy Tuesday, Happy Wednesday before a few years back, but why not? So Happy Tuesday. Um, so the theme that I started off on last Saturday was the theme of self-awareness, and I'm going to stay on that today, and then we'll move to the next topic this coming Saturday. But on the topic of self-awareness, this was again following the structure that had been the Search Inside Yourself program. They started off with mindfulness. I don't have a visualization for you here, but they followed a six-step program, organizing the talks into six steps. First is mindfulness. Second is self-awareness, and the two are obviously very closely related. Mindfulness means becoming aware of what's going on inside, or just being able to create some gap, some distance between ourselves and our thoughts to observe them. And self-awareness means basically broadening that and developing some more pervasive sense of how we see ourselves. And from self-awareness, it's self-management, the ability to begin to guide and nudge and control and tune down the bits that are not so helpful and encourage, coax out the bits that are more helpful within ourselves. Um, Self-management and then motivation. And so from that, you can begin to tune and build motivation. Now, the point with motivation is it's the strength of our mind. It's what gives energy, what gives direction, what enables us to accomplish things. And that's that one way or another, it's always important for us to be able to accomplish the things that we want to set out. So being able to build up motivation is important. The fifth step they built on was empathy, which is beginning to reach outside of oneself, right? The motivation, is the basis for self-actualization, to be able to take on challenges and become the person you want to become and so forth. But the empathy, the next step, the fifth step, is where you reach out to others and begin to become connected to them. And then the final step they presented as leadership, but also in the context of compassion, or you could say a motivation oriented towards others. And so this, in my mind, it's a perfect set. It's a perfect progression. It's a lovely progression. So we'll just be holding to that for a while today, focusing on self-awareness again. So as usual, why don't we take a few minutes just to settle in? You may be, coming in from your busy day or what have various distractions on your mind. So really helpful for us to just begin to cut some of that static, cut some of that noise, prepare our mind, and focus a bit on developing a peaceful inner state. So as usual, we can begin just by getting physically settled, physically comfortable, finding a comfortable position, maybe stretching our neck or shoulders, or if anything feels like it could use a bit of stretching and readjusting, we just settle in. We take a deep breath in and out. And then with our second breath, we just allow ourselves to relax. And with our third breath, we just ask ourselves, what is important right now? We can go through a couple of rounds of this, just taking a breath, normal breath. And taking a breath with an attitude to relax. And then breathing in and out, asking what is important right now. And we can do this cycle of 3 breaths again, 2 times on our own. And we can ask ourselves, do we feel even a little bit different now as a result of this practice? Do we feel any change, even a little subtle shift? Just reflect on this for a minute. Then we can open our eyes and rise from our meditation. Right. So I find it really lovely to uh, that three breath practice. I think it's really nice just in 1 minute. Um, Often it's possible to really have a bit of a noticeable shift, um, just a bit of relaxation, a bit of focusing. Even this question, what is important right now? It's lovely. It's an open question. You know, I don't know. You're the only one with that answer, right? And that's part of the that's part of the self awareness, right? What's important to you right now? And what is important to us is uh, is such a massive way of getting to know what's going on in our mind, right? Because it changes over the course of our life. What is important to us changes from day to day, from moment to moment, changes over the course of our life. But it tells us a lot about how we think, and it actually guides so much of what we do. What is important to us when something's important, it means we find it valuable, right, or worthwhile. And what is value, right? Valuable, we think money is valuable, paper is something we can exchange with other people. Maybe people close to us are valuable, or experience is valuable, but it's very, very, very subjective. Um, but there's no question within our mind, we have a whole mental picture of what's valuable, what's not valuable, what's worth our time, what's not worth our time, who do we like spending time with, who do we not like spending time with, what do we aspire to, what do we not aspire to. And our sense of value, imagine it like do you know what heat? Do you know what a heat map is? Where you have these maps where certain parts are red and some parts are blue, and the hot parts, cold parts. Our mind is like that. We have some sort of feeling or heat map, so to speak, towards the world around us. This is important. This is not important. And one of the big challenges when people first start to learn to meditate is somebody asks you to focus on your breath, and your breath normally is firmly in that cold zone, not important, right? Like, who cares about your breath, right? Why would your breath be important? It's fine. It's taking care of itself. I seem to be alive. I think I've got other things to think about. The breath is about the most unimportant thing in the world, until you can't breathe, right? Until your next breath, you're struggling to take a next breath or something like that, at which point it is the most important thing in the world. And it's interesting, our breath is very, very closely tied to our life force. Literally, um, it's this little quiet movement, right? It's like some dog that's sleeping under your desk that you never notice, right? It's just there, but very quiet, right? But there's something there, right? There's a little bit of a movement, and it is in fact our survival instinct. It is our survival motivation. If you try to not breathe, or you can't breathe, or you know if you just gently try not to breathe for a few moments, what you'll find is that anxiety, that survival anxiety, just starts to build up a bit, and you realize that it's tied naturally to our wish to survive. And the wish to survive is kind of like the root energy underneath everything else we do. Like, why did we go to university? Like, why did we do a job? work so hard at all these things. Our survival anxieties, it's driving everything in us, right? Even our sexual attractions and desires and these kinds of things, they're all based on survival and reproduction and these fundamental motivations um, that are driving us and driving all living beings, right? All living beings, this life force, this growth life force. And it's there just kind of whispering, quietly whispering, in the background, this wish to survive, this wish to exist, this wish to be. And we're not paying any attention to it, right? And so what we're doing in meditation is we begin to try to shift what we think of as important, right? You weren't paying any attention to your breath and you thought is super important, right? Well, this thing you had to get done. And now when you're meditating, what you're saying is, okay, it's not important to think about that thing you had to get done at work right now. The only thing that's important right now is my breath. Well, you're actually changing your mind. You're changing what you value at that time. You're changing what you think is important at the time. You think, okay, not important, not important, not important, not important. Everything else is not important. Only my breath is important. Now, what's fascinating is that you're actually controlling your own sense of what's valuable at that time. You're beginning to get a little bit of control of your mind. You think your values are shifting. What becomes important then is becoming aware, right, and controlling your attention. Now, it's interesting. Uh, we're we're at war right now for things that are demanding our attention. And I realized back, decades ago that the TV was trying to capture my attention, it was trying to suck me in. My brother and I would just sit and watch TV for like 6 hours. And that was back in the days when TV was pretty mediocre, the quality that you could watch. So you end up, if you just sit and watch TV in the 80s, right, you're watching some pretty mediocre stuff, right? A lot of commercials. And your mind's getting dragged through somebody else's story and they're trying to sell you things. And then I realized, you know, all these things were trying to grab my attention. Advertisements, advertisements, advertisements. So I began to try to discipline myself as a teenager. Okay, I'm not going to look at the advertisements, because everything wants you to buy something, and you're not a cool guy unless you've got cool sunglasses, unless you got a cool car. And I want to be a cool guy, and so I guess I've got to, I don't know, what do I have to do to play, you know, do I have to look a certain way or be a certain way, or I just thought, okay, these things are all vying for my attention. They're all trying to tell me that these things are important, right? But I know what's going to happen if I just sit on the couch and let myself be swept away. I'm going to spend all my time, my precious time, and nobody gets time back. It's a non-renewable resource. I'm going to spend all my time just wasting it, right? Just being dragged along by somebody else's agenda. I'm going to be tricked into buying things I don't need and spending my energy and money and time in ways that are not really long-term important. So I began some battle, right? I'm not going to pay attention to advertisements. I'm not going to pay. So I began battling to reclaim my attention. And that we're all doing that, right? Because we all have a billion gajillion things, right? There's about 500 things you could have been doing right now. So Eileen, your cat is adorable, by the way. So there's about a gajillion things we could be doing at any given time. And so the battle for controlling our attention has actually heated up a lot since I was young. Right now we've got social media, we've got really good stuff on TV if you wanted to watch forever, right? Well, it depends. There's video games, there's all kinds of very engaging things. There's still a lot of advertisements. And the ability to control what you think is important, right? The ability to control your mind and say, this is not important, this is important, I'm going to do this. I think you can begin to see how that is the root for being able to control your motivation, right? So this idea that you have mindfulness, you build self-awareness, self-management, motivation, can begin to control your mind. And then as I said a week ago or something, the fruit of empathy, the fruit of mindfulness, the fruit of self-development is building compassion for others, really beginning to think it's not so much about me, I'm fine. what about others, right? And then all of that takes managing your attention, managing what you think is important, coming to think that controlling my mind is much more important than being dragged around by the things around me. Learning to get control over my own mind, learning to get awareness of myself, learning to manage myself, learning to have an intention, set an intention, carry it out. That's much more important than being dragged around by other things. And then gradually we come to this sense, other people are even more important than I am. Doesn't mean we let our whole life be dragged around by all the impulsive demands of others, but we just think, how can we be of maximum service, maximum use to others? And this is a sort of a maturation of our gaining control over our mind, getting control over our attention, getting control over what we think is important. So the foundational practice is mindfulness. Mindfulness is defined just as becoming aware of our body, our mind, our environment, with an attitude of curiosity and kindness. And one thing that I think children discover really quickly is that anything can be completely fascinating if you just pay attention to it, right? Like as a child, I could sit and just look at a spider web for, 15 minutes, and you can look at the carpet, and everything's kind of fascinating if you pay attention to it, if you choose to pay attention to it. And what's particularly interesting is getting to know what's actually going on inside our mind and our body, because this is present with us all the time. It controls every aspect of our experience. If your body is comfortable and relaxed, you'll be feeling good no matter what's going on. If your body is not comfortable, if your mind's anxious and agitated, you will not be doing well, even if you're wealthy, right? You think about the wealthiest person, most famous person, you think about all these poor Hollywood celebrities, right, who fall into drug addiction, they commit suicide, they go through divorce and so forth. They had everything going for them, right? From an outer point of view, they got all the beautiful, partner, clothing, cars, whatever, fame, money, everything's going for them. But if you've got anxiety, self-hatred, self-doubt, those kinds of things, they will destroy your life. Very simply, they will destroy your life. So mindfulness is about becoming aware and curious about what's going on inside, beginning to pay attention and beginning to realize the inner world is fascinating. The inner world is beautiful, right? The world of our own mind is really very interesting. And becoming interested in that, then we begin to get some self-awareness. And self-awareness is getting to know all the changing aspects of ourself, that ourself is changing all the time. And it all starts with just getting a little bit of a gap between ourself and our feelings, or ourself and the different minds that are going on. So I mentioned on Saturday the difference between I'm angry, I'm furious, I hate this, right? Versus there is anger in my mind, or there's a feeling of anger, right? There's this, or a temptation towards anger, or something like that. It's subtle, right? I'm angry versus there's anger in my mind, or there's a feeling of anger in my body. I can feel the anger rising in my body. It's a subtle difference. When you think I am angry, you are literally identifying with your anger. And there, at that point, there is no difference between you and your anger. I am, literally, I am angry. I am anxious. I am jealous. I am disappointed. I am, and all of these statements, I am. I said this last time, but am, it's a verb, right? If you remember your basic elementary school English, right? I am is a verb. I am. It's an action. Actually, it's an act of being something. So when you act to, and in a sense, we're always acting, right? We're playing different roles, right? We think, we're playing the role of professional, we're playing the role of a friend, we're playing the role of an athlete, a runner, whatever it is that you're doing, we're always playing that role. But we need to get some distance so that we're not controlled by that identity, because it feels like when anger arises, we have no choice but to be angry. But mindfulness, it's like driving a bit of a wedge between that emotion, the emotional reaction, which we can feel in our body, and our sense of identity. Because otherwise, if we don't drive that wedge, the emotion then controls us. There's this book, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, and it starts out by talking about, I call it, I think they call it a limbic hijack, right? Or an emotional hijack, where your emotions take over, right? Just a fit of rage, and people commit crimes. They kill, they steal, or rape, or destroy something, or yell at their boss and get fired, right? All these emotional, impulsive behaviors that clearly, in retrospect, really stupid ideas, right? Just terrible ideas coming because of emotional overwhelm. But it comes really because we identify with that and we feel we're powerless compared to it. So self-awareness is beginning to become aware of all the different movements of the emotions in our body and mind, and the different identities that we take on at different times, and beginning to just notice, right? It's just about curiosity and kindness. It's just about watching these movements within the mind, because that is the foundation for gradually practicing self-management, beginning to get some control over this. But you can't really control, there's a saying, you can't manage what you can't measure. But there's a sense, it's similar, you can't get control of what you're not aware of. If you're not aware of what's going on, then you can't get control of it. Now if you're in our own ways, for our whole life, perhaps, or for perhaps it's true for you as well as it is for me, we've always felt some sense that we should be controlling ourselves, like we should be more confident, we should be like this, we should be like that, and we feel like I should be more, courageous, or I should be more peaceful, or I should be more loving, or I should be, we have all these judgments of ourselves, what we should be like. And then, of course, there's a big contrast with what we're actually like. And what does that feel like? It feels like shame. I'm ashamed, right? I'm ashamed that I'm not more confident. I'm ashamed that I'm not more loving. I'm ashamed that I'm not more, whatever, peaceful, or more determined, or whatever the qualities you want to be like. There can be some shame, some sense that, oh, I shouldn't be like this. What that does, what we're not realizing is that shame is perhaps a bigger problem than that shame is perhaps even a bigger problem than the anger, right? Or perhaps even a bigger problem than the anxiety, or whatever. That sense that we should be something different from how we actually are. That's actually worse. It's a huge issue in our mind, right? It's a kind of non-acceptance. It's the same as, imagine being in a relationship, right? Or you are in a relationship. We're all in lots of relationships, right? But especially like an intimate relationship where you're living with somebody, and then you're always thinking, oh, they should be different from how they are. Imagine going 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 years and always thinking, oh, they should be different from how they are, right? Well, guess what? Tom's fairly newly married. I'll just give you a sneak preview of the future. They're never going to change, right? That's the way they are. Start accepting them now, right? So if you live in a relationship where you're not accepting the way people are, you're just, the only one that's going to be frustrated is you. So let's look at that from the inside point of view. You're already in a relationship with whoever you are, right? You're stuck with yourself, right? That's the thing about the family you're born into. You're stuck with them, right? Once you're married, you're stuck with that person, right? And that's a good thing, right? You bind yourself in that situation, and then you change instead of wanting the other person to change. But you know who else we're stuck with? We're stuck with ourselves. And we have all these characteristics that are, some of them are just coming from our biology or early childhood, or, you know, who knows why they're coming. It doesn't even matter, right? You're stuck with yourself. You need to come to like yourself. You need to come to just accept yourself. It's just, some of these things are just what you're like. And that's perfectly fine. And that is, in fact, that is a kind of liberation. You know, we may want to be liberated from anxiety. But how about being liberated from thinking we should be fearless, when this is such an innate instinctive reaction that every single animal in the world experiences fear? Every animal in the universe experiences pain. Every animal, and as anything that experiences pain experiences fear. Fear is just the awareness of possible pain. So every being, it's innate to our being, right? But if you just create this gap, this separation, instead of thinking I'm afraid, you just think, oh, there's some anxiety in my mind. Just that little gap, just the difference between I am afraid and there's anxiety in my mind, allows for there to be acceptance. Oh, there's anxiety. Just like there is in the mind of every other single living being in the entire universe. How interesting. Look at that. There's a beautiful teaching that I like to think about, that instead of thinking, you know, this is my anxiety or my anger, or whatever, just think, no, it's just anger. Why is it yours, right? It's like, why is it yours? It's just, it may be in your mind, but why do you have to make it yours? You know, when the Europeans came to America, right? They're just like, okay, this is ours. The Native Americans have been there, right? Didn't necessarily have the same property ownership mindset. They're just thinking, no, it's not ours. It's just, it's the earth. We're here, but it's not ours. But then there's this acquisitiveness, like this acquiring mind, holding tightly, right? Even when an emotion comes up, we think, oh, this is mine. This is my fear, my anxiety, my disappointment, my rage, my frustration. They're not yours, right? They're just emotions, right? And you just happen to be witness to them. They're just playing out on the stage of our consciousness. They're just playing out on the stage of our mind. And just getting that gap, then you just can begin to be aware of these emotions that are playing out inside, and just be interested in them, right? Just as if you were watching something playing out in somebody else's mind, and without judgment, right? Like the way, if you see, if you see a child, right, and the child is getting angry and frustrated and afraid, and so, you know, you just think that's just natural. That's what kids do. Oh, you're afraid of the dark, right? It's not a heavy thing. So we can begin to create this space, becoming aware of ourselves in a non-judgmental way, just seeing that we have the entire range of human emotion playing out moment by moment inside our mind. All, you know, at different times we'll experience everything. Like now that I'm a middle-aged man, you start getting like every physical ailment that people get, you know, okay, migraines, you get this, and you get, you know, okay, some athlete's foot, and you get this, and you get, you know, hernia, and you get this, like all these, whatever humans get, gradually, if you live long enough, you'll get all of these diseases. My grandmother used to say, you know, if there's a name for it, you know, I've had it. She was diabetic and heart trouble and all these, her medical file was like this. So if you live long enough, right? So we have all the emotions. Our body will go through all of the various different kinds of physical breaking down, and this and that. And our opportunity is to become aware of that self-awareness. It's just being curious and just thinking, oh, amazing, fascinating. This is the human experience. It's terrible, but being kind of light about it. At the beginning, just before the call started, Eileen and I were chatting a little bit about journaling, and that was something I had not written in a journal since college. In college, I decided that this is very self-indulgent. I shouldn't be just blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about my thoughts. I'm not do that. But then in the Search Inside Yourself program, they had us all do some journaling, and I'm like, all right, whatever, okay. But it's interesting, if you force yourself to write, if you just ask yourself a question like, what's important to me, or what are my biggest challenges, or what am I most afraid of, or, you find these, and you just write without inhibition, and then you go back and read what you wrote, and like when you want to not write something you're actually thinking, you write it anyway. You're like, oh. Then you come back and you read it, and you're like, it's true, actually. I do sometimes think like that. It's a little bit shameful. and that's why journals, they should never be published. Like your innermost journal, they should be burned. They should be cremated with your body at the end of your life, right? But it's good for you, because it's not what you're putting out to the world. It's not the finished product, but it's an honest representation of what's actually happening inside. And sometimes that's really helpful. And that's why people get therapists, right? Therapists, they just basically ask you questions and get you to talk about yourself, and then collect money. So why should you journal? Because it is so much cheaper than therapy, right? Therapy is like $150 an hour minimum. Journaling, basically free, maybe $20 every few months if you buy a new journal. But if you just use white loose leaf paper, it's basically free. So, and you get very, very similar results. I'm sure the American Psychiatric Association will sue me for saying that, but basically it's all you need to do is just know what's going on inside your own mind. And that's like 80–90% of the work of therapy. It's just figuring out honestly what's happening. And then you can begin to deal with it in an honest way. Okay, so your homework after this session is to do some journaling. Ask yourself something like, what is important to me right now in my life? Right? Or what am I most afraid of? These questions, just a few simple questions like that. That'll get it flowing. That'll get the ideas flowing, and it's very, very helpful. Prior to that time, though, we can take a bit of a time in meditation just for the self-awareness. And we can go into this meditation just by asking ourselves a question, and asking ourselves, are there things, what's going on inside my mind that maybe I'm hiding from myself, or maybe reluctant to admit? Is there anything going on inside my mind that maybe I'm a bit shamed of, reluctant to admit? And just ask ourselves this with a mind of complete acceptance, as if you had a child who had done something naughty and was trying to hide it, but it was just so blatantly obvious that you knew exactly what they'd gotten up to, and you're just basically letting them confess, just for their own benefit. So we can just sort of open up in our mind, like, what's actually going on in our mind? Is there anything that maybe we're hiding from ourselves that we can just open up to and accept and acknowledge, and just spend a bit of time in meditation with this? Okay, so why don't we again settle into meditation? Again, just shifting our body to find some comfortable position, and taking again a deep breath in, allowing ourselves to relax. And spending a few minutes just centering on our body. And asking ourselves, how are we feeling? What feelings are arising inside our body right now? Is there any emotion happening? we can ask ourselves, is there anything happening in our mind, in our life, that we're maybe a bit embarrassed to acknowledge, but is nevertheless true? Just try to become aware of our own limitations or small or large faults that we may judge ourselves for. We just try to feel a sense of acceptance, as if we were accepting a friend or a child. If we feel a sense of shame or judgment about ourselves, we think we should be different from how we are. How is that different from judging another person? We can come to accept ourselves just as we know we need to accept the people around us. Over time, every single human emotion will move through our mind briefly or for a longer time. Our mind is like the stage. So we can just become aware of all of the different factors moving in our mind without shame, without judgment. Just thinking this is the human experience. I'm just tasting a tiny drop, tiniest drop of the human experience. And then we can think even through this brief time together here, through the intentions that we've set in this time, through the actions we've done of becoming more aware of the mind. We've changed. We've sent our mind in a slightly different trajectory. And we can think, if we kept developing in this way, what kinds of results could arise? What kind of benefits could arise for ourselves or others? Let me just appreciate this for a moment. And then we can open our eyes and rise from our meditation.